All right, it's a little warm here, but it's also really cold here right now. Yeah, I was just out there eating, and it feels like it's 112 out there. I had the AC running in here. It feels like it's 64 in here. So I don't really get a solution either way. Ah, that's a little bit better. But, all right. So if you're new to what we're doing, this is part of a series that I've been working on. I've always been of the philosophy that if you give any two artists the same building blocks, you're going to get two different stories from them, or two different works from them. So if you give any two artists the same building blocks, you'll get two different works from them. And I've seen that for a long time in my explorations of artwork, where there are a lot of people who are worried about whether or not their work will seem, or somebody else did it. They want to be original. And, in my experience, there's no such thing. Because anything that you're writing should have a point to it. And the thing is that points in stories, the point of a story so often is it's almost required to be a thing that communicates something that's important or known to you. And we're not special snowflakes. We're not all individual to a degree that we have no overlap. So if any piece of artwork you're creating is built around the premise of communicating something that's important to you, there's a good chance it's something that's important to many other people. So the odds are that somebody else has had the same ideas before. Your work is not going to seem original if you're defining original as nobody else has done this before. You're never going to have that happen, because everything's going to be drawing on the experiences of what it is to be us in our lives. And so you don't have to sweat it so much about being original. But even more than that is, even if you set two people down and gave them the same list of characters, Josie, who's a tomboy and she's a skateboarder, and Michael, who's a technological genius and high school. Okay, so you've got these characters. They're not directly derivative, but they're also not, nobody's ever seen those before. And you set them in a world of, I don't know, what do you want to do? You want to do a world without superheroes? So they're sort of like secret agents. What are we moving into Kim Possible territory? Maybe. But so what? I mean, it's like, if you give everybody the same building blocks, like I said, Josie and I forget the name of the boy already. Michael? Kevin? It doesn't matter. You give these two characters, and they're sort of reminiscent of existing characters in other formats, but they're not the exact same thing, because me as a writer, I would write them differently than the people who wrote Kim Possible. And unless I'm directly copying somebody, like lifting the script and just changing names, then it's not going to come off feeling the same way. You could literally have somebody read you the plot summary of episodes of Kim Possible, give them Josie and Peter, or whatever we name the kid, as character designs, make them Asian instead of white, and make them high school, early college. And instead of being secret agents for some government secret agency, you make them, you do something a little along the lines of Warehouse 13. Like, that's already different enough. It's like you've got something so different that it's not the same thing. But if instead we took the entire series run of Kim Possible, took an episode and just changed the names to Josie and Peter, and changed the names of some characters, changed the name of the school, and tried to rewrite based off of the plot summary of individual episodes, even if we did that, whatever I write with those characters based off of those plot summaries is going to feel different, because I won't write dialogue the same way. I won't set scenes in the same way. I won't dialogue, scenes, character behaviors, visual angles, perspective on circumstances, and the motivation behind the episode. So, like, if you've ever looked at a piece of artwork and you saw something and somebody else looked at the same artwork and saw something else, that's one of the reasons this happens, is because people get different things from the same source. And it means different things to different people. And so if I've watched or read or otherwise consumed something and it means something to me, then when I try to duplicate that meaning, I'm duplicating what that meant to me. But if you watch the same thing and it meant something different to you, my regurgitation of it may not convey to you the same thing as the original for you, because I didn't see it that way, and I can't recapture those things that you saw because I didn't see them. It's a big, long-winded way of saying that the style and character of a writer or an artist is found in the artworks, and your work can't help but be different on some level. And so by that token, I've always operated from the premise that if you give me the same building blocks as others, I will come up with a different story, and hopefully my stories are worth watching or reading because of those differences, that the story has something to offer. And as a way of exploring that, I periodically I would watch a review something on this channel and then generate 6 ideas for new works inspired by those concepts. And sometimes it's as slight a sliver as I watched that and it made me think of. So, like, free association, instead of, I can't think of an example right now, but instead of an example of one format of thing, if you're watching a horror movie and I happen to be watching it and thinking, like, this town that they're in would be a great comedic romance setting. And that may be the slightest tangential connection that I have to start with. And sometimes it's full on just saying, like, what if we just twisted this story to see how Rambo would be different if it was a military nurse that came back from the war and she's experiencing the whole story the same way. But how is it different for it to be a nurse and to be female than it is for the main character, and just that one little change, how does that change the overall story? And so I love to do things like that. And so earlier this year, part of what I ended up doing was exploring the concept of, let's go over and pick apart some things from pop culture, disassemble them to their constituent components, and then reassemble them into new works inspired by the original. So we did things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which turned into 3 Raven sisters who are half Raven, half human, because of a teleportation device used by a scientist on Raven eggs. And they're a detective agency helping out people in the city who are potentially being influenced or attacked by a secret society with a penchant for Norse mythology, led by a Odin-like figure who's got an obsession with ravens and crows. So, like, that's a whole different direction for going with something like that. We did Ghostbusters and Stargate and Terminator. I thought we did 9 of them, but I think we did 12 or 13 of them. And so we did a list of them. And then I recorded the videos of each new setting idea or story idea to pursue. I made my notes on my laptop, and we made it through the list of all of those that we started with, and I built a big list of other things that we could play with. And I took a little break from it for a little while, and about a month after that, I had a hard drive crash. And the hard drive crash ate all the files that I kept about what I was doing. Now, we still have the videos of what we did last time, but those videos would tell me what I did last time. But if I don't know what I did last time and just went back over and redid Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and redid Stargate and redid Ghostbusters and Terminator again, taking the original, breaking it down to its constituent parts and reassembling them into a new idea, I get to be the second artist in my example, where I say any 2 artists given the same building blocks come up with different stories. I get to be both artists. I get to be the first one and the second one, because I don't remember what I did last time. There's 13 story ideas. I didn't even remember there were 13 of them. So I got to redo them. And so what we've been doing is doing a second pass over some of these. Now, gradually, when doing some of these, it does spark a memory, and I go, oh, right, we did this last time, right? But where possible, I'm trying to just forget that and go a new direction with it. And so we've done all of them, I think. This time I'm pretty sure we did all of them. And we've got 1 left. It took me 13 minutes to get to this point, but we've got 1 left, and that is Matilda. I have no idea what I did for Matilda last time. Did we do something technological, like a Stewie from Family Guy, I think? I can't remember. Anyway, that's the point, is I have no memory of what we did last time, but this time in, I'm thinking the thing that I liked about Matilda as a movie, I don't know anything about the children's book. Matilda as a movie appeals to me as a book-loving nerd, because you have this little girl in a family full of people who are anti-intellectual con artists and trickers who don't care and neglect her very much. But at a young age, she shows a superb level of intelligence and finds out that she can go to the local library and read the books there. Well before people her age should be able to read, she was reading books at the library, and she read them at a prodigious rate. And she learned and learned and learned, and she's a very bright child. I love that part of Matilda. Heck, I like the whole movie. The idea of a little girl who has these special powers that she gets to fight against injustice in her environment and help somebody who cares about her teacher, Miss Honey, when it seems like nobody else will do it. And I love that story. I love the idea of the adoption at the end. As an adopted child, I like to see a good portrayal of an adoption that's meaningful and respectful of the concept. So Matilda, in general, has a lot of things I really like. I think the biggest problem I've ever had with Matilda is you start with that main character who's unique and special in the fact that she is so thoroughly a literary nerd. She reads everything, and she works her way through an entire library by the age of 6. Or something like that. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But she is such a nerd, and she thirsts so much for new things to learn and read about, that I love that aspect. But it's not the source of her abilities. It's like, it doesn't play any real role in the movie other than as an illustration of how she's different from her parents. And her powers, they're never explained. They don't come from anywhere. It's just something she does. And at the end of the movie, she never does it again. I think they say something like that, where she was so happy in her life that she never felt the need to use her abilities ever again, so she just didn't have them after that. I was like, that's wrong. All of that is wrong. It's, to me, in my mindset, good story development doesn't introduce things that don't have a bearing on the story, like her reading a lot. I mean, you can have aspects of a character like that, but you've built it up to be such a unique and special thing, and you don't do anything with it. And likewise, to have a story in which you have somebody who has powers that nobody needs to explain, it's just convenient to the plot for her to have them. That, again, is sloppy story writing. Now, I know the whole story's written as a children's book and adapted to a movie. So there's a tendency in children's literature and children's programming to not ever justify it. Like, I think I watched a few years ago, I did a review of the Ewoks cartoon. And somewhere in there, they just had magic soap that lets you disappear. Like, what? What? Because it was important to the episode. Oh, okay. That's the only reason? Okay. And it's never brought up again. It was never brought up before. And it wasn't something that was even hinted as a possibility of how situations would be going in the episode until they needed it. That's just poorly written. But it's a TV program. They can drop those kinds of things in the middle if they want to. There's a little bit of Matilda that feels that way to me, where this is for kids. We don't have to justify anything. We can do what we want with it. So there's a part of me that's deeply inclined to say, look, either you explain the circumstances of where her powers come from, and her reading is not even really a unique feature. It's just a side note in the background. Or her reading proclivities are important to the story, and you don't do the powers thing. Pick one. It's like you've taken two stories and mashed them together without trying to figure out how to blend them where the seam meets. And so my inclination is to take the story and say, I want the character of Matilda, just because, like, magic powers from nowhere, that's fairy tale stuff. And if you want to tell a fairy tale, go for it. That's not what I want to do. So what I want to do is I want to take the character of Matilda and develop the reading into what makes the special circumstances for the character and makes her a heroine for the story and makes it so that she can fight against the unjust elements of the story. And so my thought on that is to take her reading and have her branching out wider and wider and uncovering more interesting and weird stories. So I'm thinking along the lines of, what if she finds how... So, like, if you've ever read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, early in the book, it references the fact that Dr. Frankenstein, young Dr. Frankenstein, studied the works of Magnus, Agrippa, and Paracelsus. These are all really well-known alchemists in the spiritual community. And so these alchemists, specifically Paracelsus as an alchemist, and this is real-world stuff, specifically Paracelsus, von Hohenheim, dabbled with a process of creating life. Oh God, my digestive system just picked a fight with me, so I may have to bolt. Paracelsus developed a entity that he created, supposedly, called a homunculus. Now, the homunculus were small creatures created from non-living flesh and some blood combined in a ball of manure with a human sperm or something like that, and buried in the ground in the garden for like a month or so. And it's some weird mythology to it, and it's not really important to go into it. But in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the reference to those characters being an inspiration for some of the works of Dr. Frankenstein, despite the fact that Dr. Frankenstein came years after they were supposedly gone, means that he was delving into a library at the school where he was and found the works of these partially discredited scientists and medicinal experts, the people who came up... I mean, Paracelsus also, aside from creating homunculus, also established the foundations of for pharmaceuticals. So basically, he would take existing plants, chop them up, macerate them in water, distill out the essential oils, distill out the alcohols, and filter out and distill out the salts, and then recombine them into tablets that have the properties of the plant without necessarily the bulk ingredients like the fiber and other carbohydrate structures that don't actively achieve anything within the plant. And so he made pharmaceuticals from herbs and plants. So he was a medicinal scientist when there wasn't really much of anything like that of his time. So that's Paracelsus. So his works do sort of belong in an institute where somebody like a young Dr. Frankenstein was maybe studying medicine. And in his studies, he uncovers the works of these people and decides to explore the creation of life and creates Frankenstein's monster. And so the creation of this monster is partially resultant from him dabbling in esoteric sciences like alchemy, like the works of creating a homunculus. So Frankenstein's monster is sort of a homunculus created by a guy studying at a university, accessing books in the library of alchemists and wizards of the past. Can we take that same direction? Can we have somebody like see, the tricky part of this is that the tendency to look at Matilda's movie role, her father is not an educated man. He's a con artist. His mother is not an educated woman. She's sort of vapid and greedy. And where I'm thinking this goes is Matilda is the child of somebody going to a university, and she kind of wanders the university when her parents are otherwise elsewhere, and she dabbles with exploring the library. And in exploring the library, uncovers some books that are supposedly way beyond her reading grade, but also lead her to esoteric knowledges that grant her abilities, sort of. What I'm thinking of is the exploration of the Fae, fairies, and mystical beings. So there's a tendency to think of like household sprites, brownies, cobbler elves, those types of things, as unseen by the eyes of adult humans, but able to get up to mischief if you've earned their mischief. And I feel like there's room in this story idea to have the Matilda character learn about how to perceive them, and maybe partly because she's still a child, be more receptive to seeing them. And once upon seeing them, she could easily stir their mischievousness towards the justice element that the original Matilda had. So the idea that the original Matilda was defending Miss Honey against her evil Aunt Trunchbull, who may or may not had a role in the death of Miss Honey's father, to take over his house. Like a justice element like that fight, and to protect and defend the children of the same school that she belongs to from injustice. The idea that instead of being able to telekinetically move things around, instead she could communicate and has a rapport with various little brownies and sprites in the environment, and you can play at the fact that oftentimes sprites and brownies of certain types were not indiscriminately malicious. Like, they're pranksters, yes. But you have to do something so wrong that you earn their hostility at a certain point. Ouch. Wow. Okay, easy. So the character would likely have to appeal to the sense of right versus wrong, even if it's a slightly different right versus wrong that the fairies tend to adopt, and gain allies in that fight. And I can kind of see that as something worth exploring. The hardest problem I'm having is there's the element of the parents being anti-intellectual to a certain degree in the movie makes it harder, but not impossible. I will say that it makes it harder for the parents to be the reason why they're on the campus of a college with access to a major library that can have the depths in which you can hide these mythical works. The book on Fae. So uncovering that book is, and I like the idea of it being on a college campus or a college town at the very least. All right, hang on. I have to step out for a second. I will be right back. I need to take a bio break, I guess. That's painful. Ouch. The joys of a chronic health concern. Holy cow. Ouch. That hurts. All right. So we're going to stay with fuzzy vision if we're going to do that. All right. Okay. So the biggest thing I'm struggling with on this one is Matilda as a child of somebody on a campus. Generally speaking, people go to a college to achieve higher learning and have a certain degree of intellectualism to them. So you're less likely to encounter either teachers or students who are inclined towards anti-intellectualism. So I have to think about that element a little bit more. We may not end up using the idea of her being so unique as a major bookworm in a house full of people who couldn't ever remember the last time they picked up a book. So we'd have to depart from that concept. Or they could be part of the community around the college in a college town. Like I grew up in a town where the college was in the middle of the town, but I mean, you could literally take a few steps off the front lawn of the college and find houses in the community that had nothing to do with anybody at the college. So you could have that be what's going on in the town. Okay, that's starting to bug me. You didn't fix yourself. Really? Really? Okay. Wow, you didn't get any better. You tried, but you didn't get any better. Whatever. Maybe I just look like that tonight. Maybe I'm just hazy. Anyway, so the idea of Matilda being a member of the community around the college. Finding her way around the college and being well enough known, accessing the college library, and reading books that are way outside of what you'd expect her to be able to read. Is it getting worse? Come on, dude, really? Yeah, you're just gone for the night. I might just call it for the night if it's going to continue to be like this. I'm going to have my problems. It's going to have its problems. And I have things in the story that I need to work out for tomorrow, I guess. And I don't know that I'm going to set it up as like the helpless elementary school teacher who's super nice. See, I think the thing that I want to do towards this is, in the story of Matilda, she ends up with the teacher who's the victim of Miss Trunchbull. If we're going down the route of a story of a young girl who's wandered in, for lack of a better phrase, to the world of the fairies and can work with them, I feel like maybe going in the direction of going to live with the Fae, being adopted, be a changeling, live with the Fae. I feel like that's kind of where I want to go. And I feel like if we're dealing with fairy tale realm stuff, the idea that Miss Trunchbull maybe isn't entirely human and maybe part ogre or something like that, I think is something to explore. There was a claymation, a stop motion animation movie called Box Trolls. That's what it was. And there was a kid who was sort of living with the box trolls. I don't remember the whole thing. And then there were people, the red hats, red caps, I don't know. The red caps are usually considered one of the Fae populations. But in this case, they're troll hunters. They hunt down trolls. But they're terrible people. And so I got to thinking that potentially the red hats could be, they weren't in the movie, but could be used as the idea of not entirely Fae creatures, but not entirely human creatures who have a sort of vendetta against the other Fae and are using that as an excuse to hunt down their fellow Fae creatures. So I could almost imagine a Miss Trunchbull not being a singular entity, but part of a group like that, who are sort of wiping clean any influence from sprites and stuff from the campus, not just Miss Honey's dad's house. I don't know. I'll have to dabble with that a little bit over the next day and see what I can come up with. I can't believe the camera's still being a jerk about this. I'm going to call it here tonight. I'm just not having the luck for it. Sorry about that long wait on me getting sick, but we shall see how this goes for the morrow. Until then, I will ask you to take care and have a good night. Sorry, I misspelled something. Yeah, there's an F in the middle of good. Yeah, it works.